This time on Shift Points, you get to watch me and him bash our heads against the wall, so trying to get this thing plumbed. What do you think, Daddy? What do you think, Daddy?
Yeah, I should do it.
While we were waiting on the parts to come, we announced a little thing on Facebook the other day. We're taking this truck on Power Tour. So this year, Power Tour 2023, brought to you by Hot Rod and Continental Tire. They're actually going to be doing the Power Tour starting in Atlanta, going to Columbia, Rockingham, Concord, and then Bristol, Tennessee. So literally, it's never gonna get any closer than it is in this year. So now this truck has to be running. It needs to be well tested before then. It's going to be about a 1,000-mile road trip. We'll drive down to Atlanta and then start that loop and then drive back over here from Bristol. So the truck needs to be well more than tested and ready to go for that. So we have to really kind of buckle down now. To get registered and everything, we had to get a tag and get insurance and all that stuff. So that's when we went ahead and did a kind of a pre-assembly here. So we got everything fitted. We got the hood set on in place, actually buttoned up the front end, and you can kind of see, if I can get the door closed here, you can kind of see how this thing is going to end up looking, and I think it's just going to look really good. So I really like this wheel combination. I always like these wheels, but seeing them on the truck now, it really, I don't know, just kind of added something to it. This is really close to how it's going to sit whenever it's on the ground. So we have the jack stands under the axle housing, so that's got the rear end set where it needs to be. We have those stiff knees in there to simulate kind of where the shocks will sit. So this is really close to what it's going to look like whenever we get this thing running and going. So make sure, if you guys are going to go on Power Tour, comment below. Tell us that you're going to go. Tell us, when you're going to leave and things like that. We'd like to get a group together. I've already been talking to some guys that are going to be leaving from Burnsville on, I believe, Monday morning. We're going to leave early Monday morning and head on down. So let us know, because we want to get a group together and then we can all ride down together to start off in Atlanta on Monday. So that's super exciting, and something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and I think it's the perfect application for this truck. So we're really excited about that. So we've talked before about how they don't make a kit for stuff like this. You can't call an app store and say, hey, I need radiator hoses for a 55 Chevrolet truck that go to an LS. So that's honestly, it's been a bit of work that we've had to put in just to research and find something that will work. So let me tell you kind of what we're dealing with here. So if you see right here, right in there, is the upper hose fitting to the water pump. That's where that is, and then that needs to be connected here to the upper radiator outlet. So you can see there's not a ton of space. That needs to come here, come up, clear this mass airflow sensor, and then go over into the upper radiator outlet up there. Then if we get down here and look at the lower section, so this is the thermostat housing for the LS. And turn the light on here so we can see a little better. So this is the thermostat housing for the LS, and you can see down there is the lower radiator outlet inlet. And there's about a 8 or 10 inch difference in height, and you can see everything's just really tight in here. Dad actually took some welding rod and made a template on both of these to see if maybe there was any chance that we could go and find some, who knows, some random application that might be close. Maybe we could cut, we could adapt. The other thing is that all 4 of those hose ends have a different size diameter. So not only do we need something that's kind of twisted, has some weird angles and things like that, it also has different size hose ends on both sides of it. So this was the template for the lower radiator hose. So this would be coming in on this side, coming into the thermostat housing, and then that would be going into the lower radiator hose. Or lower point on the radiator. So you can see this is not something that you're going to find. The upper one looks a little more simple as far as that goes. This is for the upper side of the radiator, and that's going into this side right here is going into the water pump on the engine. So again, this one looks a lot more simple as far as just straight 90s on most of it. He went and spent probably an hour and a half a couple weeks ago looking at the Napa store to just see if there was anything that was even remotely close, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing that we could find that was even remotely what we needed. So I've scoured the internet, I've looked for everything, and I think just today we found what we're going to use. I think it's going to end up being really nice. It's some adapter couplings that go for all four of those connections and then turn it into an AN fitting. I won't go into a lot of detail about them today. I'll just wait till they get here and show you how they work. But I think it's going to work really well. It's going to clean everything up, and it's going to be a nice black nylon hose, so it's going to look like it really belongs there, as well as should be super functional. The other thing you have to worry about with that, you don't want any leaks. You don't need any coolant leaks. You don't want anything like that. So we need to make sure that whatever we get is good quality stuff. So we actually just got off the phone with the guy. He was very knowledgeable. He was actually the guy who owns the company. Very nice guy, and really spoke highly of his products, of course, because I mean they're his products, that he should. So when they get here, we'll talk more about them, and I'll show you guys kind of the solution that we came up with that. But that is another example of adding days and tacking on so much time onto this stuff. It's literally took us weeks of looking for different solutions, different ways to do it, trying to come up with better ways, clean, effective ways, and it just really just continues to tack on, and it's always kind of running in the back of your mind while you're working on other stuff too. So where we ended up getting the plumbing supplies that we're going to use to plumb up the radiator into the engine itself was a place called Auto Plumb. The owner's name was Joe. He was very helpful, very nice guy that got us kind of figured out on everything that we needed. Was very helpful when he found out we were from a small shop. Very nice of him to help us out. And basically what these are is they're a fitting that's going to adapt a standard radiator neck, basically, with the dimple bead end into an AN fitting. And that AN fitting will allow us to kind of opens up a whole nother world that we can use the AN fittings and use nylon hose to plumb the entire system. So what we went with looks like this. It is like I said, it's a 3-piece fitting. There's actually a seal in here too, so technically a 4-piece fitting. This will go over the radiator neck. This seal will go in there. And then there's the rubber seal in here also. So that will all go together, clamped together on that neck of the radiator. And once that's all clamped up how it's supposed to be, we'll go into an AN fitting like this. We went with -20 stuff on all of this. So the fitting, this will have the hose end on it. So this will go into this fitting, just like that. And this will get screwed in. And so you'll see we'll have a 90. We bought 2 90s and 2 straights because I think that's what we're going to end up needing for whenever. I think the 2 straights will go on the radiator itself, and the 2 90s are going to go on the water pump and on the thermostat housing. So also from water pump for the plumbing. So these fittings here, these aren't Auto Plumb branded. They're actually Aeroflow, one of Auto Plumb's partners, we believe. Looks like some really nice fittings. We haven't actually used them. And then also we also bought 5 feet of this nylon -20 hose. So this should more than carry the water that we need it to carry to keep this engine cool. If you guys know anything about these LSs, they cool extremely well. Basically, they set and run at 210. Doesn't matter if you're sitting in traffic. If you are, if you're running down the highway, they're always set at that 210 on your gauge. The cooling system on these things are just really, really good. So that's why we didn't want to mess with this. We left the thermostat in it. We didn't want to swap over to a small block or big blocks thermostat. We wanted to stick with the LS style keep that standard thermostat housing, all of that, keep the system as close to stock as possible, so that it works as well as it possibly can in this truck. So they also recommend getting this wrench. It's also an Aeroflow product. They recommend getting this. They sell this at a reduced price because they want you to use it so adamantly. They want you to use it. So you can see here, this is labeled at 2B, and that is for this fitting here. So when you're actually screwing that onto the actual adapter itself, and then this one that says 2S, and that is for this nut here, which we're assuming that the 2S stands for like 20, or 20S stands for like the seal. So this is actually where this hose seals up into this fitting. So that would be the 2S and the 2B. So we'll let you know how all this goes as we go along. We'll show you guys how we're going to do it. We'll pull the radiator out of the truck. That's actually what Dad's working on right now. Going to pull the radiator out of the truck and kind of figure out how these go. They were really adamant about making sure you follow the instructions to a T. They said follow them exactly how they say to do them, and everything's going to work really well. So if we pull this out, we can lay the radiator down over there on the bench on that towel to make sure that it doesn't bend up any of the pins on the radiator. We can figure out how it all goes together on the top and bottom, get all the kinks worked out, and then we can come over here because, of course, we're going to have to do the water pump and the thermostat housing in the truck. There's a lot less space, not as much room to do what you need to do, so best to learn over there on the bench. So that's what we're going to do now when Dad gets his radiator out. Okay, so we had to run to O'Reilly's real quick, and we had to get some more the Permatex gasket maker. They recommend using that on the seal here. I think I told you guys earlier that the seal, that this metal shim and then the rubber seal itself actually went on the other side of the bead, but it's actually on the side closest to the radiator. So let me show you. So the first thing you have to do is you apply this the like sandpaper tape onto the adapter housing, onto the fitting here. Then you apply some grease to this shim. And then now the next thing that we're going to do is take the rubber seal here, and that actually goes down over this and over on this side of the bead. So that has to get this black Permatex gasket maker. We're using the Max Flex. This stuff's like super flexible and makes a good gasket. So it says that this is more just for lubrication whenever we do the assembly. If you look at it's hard to tell without actually like feeling it, but the actual adapter here is on a taper, and then it goes into a square seat. So it says to use this Permatex generously. To use the Permatex generously on that seal, because it allows it to lubricate as it seats into the adapter housing of the adapter housing, and then it'll seal up and make a gasket also after the fact. So once we get this all assembled, we start this process, then it's going to set overnight, and we're going to let that gasket set up. It says not to disturb it. They prefer for a few hours at least, but overnight if possible. Luckily, we're in no rush, so it can be overnight. So the further along we get in this, the more very happy it is that we got this wrench. It is, you can see how nice that sits on that fitting. Now it says tighten that by hand as much as possible, which we did. So now we're starting to ease into it as much as we can. It says kind of the final step is to take the rubber strap slip wrench and put that on the adapter side, and then start tightening that up. So it says a proper seat. Proper is between this body and the adapter ring should be less than 75 thousandths of an inch is how that's supposed to be. They'll tell you that everything is seated up really nice in there. So now Dad's bringing the slip wrench in here. We're going to put that on that grip tape. Make sure we got a good good bite on it, and then we'll start tightening with the wrench. So now we'll start doing that. So that turned out really, really good. You can see this here. That's where they actually tightened it to the point where the actual the grip tape ripped. So it says to tighten as tight as possible. In the instructions, it specifically says that. Looks like it says that this, like I said earlier, the adapter body and the ring are supposed to be within 75 thousandths of each other. Dad actually took some feeler gauges and checked it, and we're way about 55 thousandths, he said. So we're about 55 thousandths apart. So I mean, and it was as tight as we could get it, really. So that's the first one done. We're gonna rotate it around here and start working on the second one. And so far, we're very happy with how these work. So have to see how it goes whenever we actually get coolant in it. All right, so I don't know if you guys watched that whole time lapse, but if you did, that was the complete process on how to do this. So you saw from the very beginning to the very end. So the first one of these, I would say just slightly tedious because you're just learning. But the second one, I mean, what, a couple minutes, few minutes, 5 minutes maybe it took us to do this. This one actually seated up a lot more than the one on that bottom side. So we're going to flip it around now and see if we could tighten down a little more, because this one has almost no gap. Like, it's completely seated. And it says to tighten it as tight as possible. So we're going to flip the radiator around and see if we can get any more of that gap brought down. If you buy these and you use them, spend the money, buy this wrench. We've said at least 3 times so far in this process of doing 2 of these that we're very happy that we have this. It fits so well. Spend the extra, whatever it was, $30 or $40, and buy this. So I showed you guys the fittings on the water pump and on the thermostat housing with the radiator in. But now that we have that out, it's so much easier to see kind of what we're dealing with here. So you can see right there, there's the fitting into the water pump itself. And then here's the thermostat housing. So I read in the instructions that apparently a lot of these LS water pumps have like a double bead on this, but this one does not have that, because they recommended to cut the second or the upper bead off to make sure you had a good seal. But this one only has the one, so luckily that I'm glad, because we don't have to come in here and cut that off or do anything like that, because it says, you know, make sure it's square and all that stuff. So there's that one. There's the thermostat housing Dad's working on now. And for reference, for height, the radiator sits like right there. So I told you guys there was like this probably 6 or 8 inches of difference between where the bottom of the radiator and the thermostat housing comes. And so there you can definitely see it with the radiator out. Dad, do you like them?
Yes, I do. Very nice.
Good. So hopefully we got 2 of them on. We got 2 on the radiator, so we're going to go ahead and jump in tonight while we're got our hands dirty and grease and Permatex everywhere, and go ahead and throw the other 2 on these fittings, see what we're going to have to deal with. We're thinking there's a good chance that we're going to have to, with that 90, there's going to be a 90 that comes out of this to go down here to the lower radiator. I'm pretty sure we're going to have to do something about that. Which luckily there's nothing behind this inner fender. We can cut it and clearance it a little. I think we're going to have to do something there. So let's see. So we got the water pump one done. This one, so this is 3 of the 4 we were able to get to seat all the way down. So that's there. This one's here. Do we have clearance? No, we do not have clearance. I thought I had a fitting lane here. No, we do not have clearance. We're going to have to, I think, just take and cut this out. Just clearance it enough to get that 90 in here. So the 90 will come in, come down, probably run something like this direction, and then down into here. That dash 20 hose is beefy, as you saw. So That's what we were just talking about before we started filming. This is just kind of, we hope it has enough flex in it to be able to get down from that 90 into that straight, or from the straight up to the 90. I think we could position that 90 in a way to get it to work. That's grabbed it. Grabbed the 90 right here. So you can see, I mean, the outlet for the radiator set's about right here. And so, yeah, it's going to be tight. I mean, it's a really short little short run there, but hopefully.
90 on the radiator too, so
yeah, we'll just have to make it work. That's all we can do. So yesterday we spent pretty much the whole day trying to continue to work on this cooling system. Yeah, it's basically fought us the entire way, since from trying to get the radiator mounted to trying to figure out the right way to plumb it. And you guys saw us do those auto plumb couplers. Those look really good and work really well. At least so far, they look like they're functioning really well. Everything's set up really good with that Permatex. We let it set overnight, and everything is super, super solid. So, but we ended up working, like I said, all day yesterday trying to figure it out. And so basically the issue is, and we have it pulled out of, we have the radiator pulled out right now. Basically what we thought was going to be kind of the issue was this top fitting trying to come over here to this center inlet on the radiator. That actually ended up being the easy part. There'll be this -20 hose that there's a straight fitting that'll come out of this. No, excuse me. We ordered a 45 fitting to come out of this. It's going to basically loop from here and then loop up and around up into that, into a straight fitting on the upper radiator hose. So it's a little kind of hard to see, so everything's a little just kind of theoretical, but basically the hose will come out pointed in this direction, wrap around, come up here. It clears everything. It clears the mass airflow sensor on the intake tube and everything. But then we ended up spending basically the rest of the day trying to figure out the lower fittings and everything there. So what we ended up having to do, as you can see, we've clearanced this fender and stuff. We had the thermostat housing with that coupler on it. And then we thought we could run a 90 off of it and then just kind of run it straight down into another 90 here on this lower output, which is setting like right here. The problem is that -20 stuff's so big, it actually, the 90s, there would basically not be any hose between them. So you'd have a 90 coming down and then they almost butt into each other. Everything's so close and tight because those fittings are as big as they are. So we reached back out to Auto Plumb. They've got those airflow fittings. We ordered the 45 to put on this because we didn't buy a 45. We had two 90s and two straights. And they make a thermostat housing that'll go on here. It bolts in place here, and it's just just comes straight out AN fitting, a male AN fitting coming out of that. So what we'll be able to do is we'll run a 90 off of this, 90 off of that, basically. Is that what we ended up deciding? A 90 on it, on both of them, Daddy?
What?
Is that what we decided? A 90 on coming off that thermostat housing and a 90 coming off the lower fitting?
90 either way, we're going to have to run a 90 and turn it toward the driver's side.
That's
and
right.
Loop the hose, or I'm going to have to cut the water outlet off the radiator and move it to the driver's side.
Gotcha.
And I think that's probably what we're going to end up doing, but I think it'd be a whole lot neater and less likely to interfere with the belts, or we'll just have to figure it out when we get to pieces.
Yeah, that's right. I did forget that. So we did decide that basically if we come right here, it will come out of here with a 90, can either point in this direction, and like I said, the outlet's over here. So we'll either run a 90 here and kind of do a loop and have a hose that would kind of come from here, loop down, and then over into another 90 here. Or like Dad said, he might just cut that outlet off over here, weld that hole up, and then cut a hole and weld the outlet back in over here, run a 90 off. So you'd have a 90 coming out here and a 90 there. So you just have one hose running straight. That is, like he said, going to be the neatest way to do it. It's going to be some extra work for sure, but at this point, I think it might be worth it. We've just, like I said, it's just battled us the entire time that we've tried to do anything with this. The next thing that we're going to look at while we're waiting on parts, because it'll probably be a few more days until we get those, we're going to start looking at tightening up the brake fittings. We're going to look into the power steering lines. So the power steering lines, I mean, this thing has a power steering pump on it. The engine already has a power steering pump and everything already on there. It's right here. And then that needs to go down here into the rack. And since we already have into the rack here, and since we already have the radiator and stuff out and all that figured out, we'll just need to figure out the lines. Styles over in Burnsville has all the fittings and stuff to make the power steering lines that we're going to need to. So we'll just have to kind of figure out what we need, make some templates, and figure out what fittings we need on each end. One side, the low pressure side of that power steering on these trucks is just a hose. It doesn't have any sort of screw-in fitting or anything like that. So that part will be easy, but the high pressure side will actually have to have threaded fittings and go into the back of the power steering pump on the block, and then run down into the rack itself so we can get all that stuff figured out. So that's a big thing. Like I said, I think we'll start tightening up some brake lines. I don't think we'll bleed the brakes just yet. We might have to wait a little while on that, but once we get everything tightened up, we get the brake fluid put in it, we'll bleed the brakes. I mean, once we get the coolant hoses, we already have the heater hoses figured out. So I'll walk back here. I think Dad's got the stuff in the back of the cab. Yeah. So he found some heater hoses that already have 90s in them. So basically that's going to be pretty straightforward. We'll have the 90s that come out of these two fittings here, and we'll have them turn. We'll cut them a little shorter, have 90s come out past the headers, and then they go up here into here to go into the heater. So that should be pretty straightforward, thankfully. So we'll get those put on. So once we get the power steering lines put on, the coolant hoses kind of figured out, and then running those heater hoses, the wiring and everything's done to start this thing. We'll just need to put some fluids in it, do a pre-check on everything, put a little fuel in the tank, and we're ready to do our first test fire. So we're really not too far away on this as far as that goes. But there's those three kind of big things that we're working on to try and get figured out. So that's what we're going to do. We pretty much always have like 2 or 3 things going on at any one time. So as Monty Python says, now for something completely different. So we have been working on this truck, but as you guys know, or as you guys probably are also, I'm pretty much always on Facebook Marketplace, scouring the internet looking for different stuff. So this morning I found an Edelbrock Performer air gap RPM intake for a small block. So Dad took and kind of mocked up. This is going to be the small block that's going to go into my truck. I've got an 86 square body. For those that don't know, I've got an 86 square body that this is going to go into. It's got a 305 in it now that has, let's just say it's got some blow by. I don't know how much longer it's going to last. We'll see. So this engine, the machine work's been done for it for a long time. It's honestly been stored here. It used to be a family member's. I bought it from them. So he mocked this up. The one this is the Performer EPS. A good friend of ours is letting us use this. I think we decided this morning that it's going to end up on my 76 Jimmy. It also has a 350 small block in it. And for those of you that don't know, those things are pretty gutless even when they were brand new. So we're going to put this one on because it's got a little pickup in torque and horsepower. So we'll probably end up putting that on that truck to try and get a little bit more out of it, just to help it all that we can. So this one will come out, and then that air gap, hopefully, as long as that thing's still available on Friday, we'll get it and put it on this engine. As to go with that engine, I also, like a year or more ago now, I bought an American powertrain kit. So sitting in this box here and in these various boxes is the whole kit to convert that truck over from the Turbo 350 that's in it to a Tremec 5-speed. So that'll all be happening like kind of at one time. So once we get this truck wrapped up, we've got a customer truck coming in after this. Then it's kind of full steam ahead on Dad's race car. And then probably once all that's wrapped up, if you say it fast, it's really easy. Once all that's wrapped up, we're going to start working on that truck. So we'll pull the 305 that's in it out, the Turbo 350 that's in it out. We'll bring it in here. I'm going to kind of do quite a bit of stuff to it at one time while we're in here. I'll pull the carpet out. I've got some vinyl flooring I'm going to put in it. Put some coating on the floor to keep from any sort of rust preventative. That truck's got zero rust, so I want to keep it that way. So it's basically been parked for the past month and a half probably because of the salt and the snow that's been going on. So that's parked, but we'll get it in here. I'm going to pull all that out, put some of that in, and then we'll pull motor and transmission out and put this new motor transmission combo in. Like I said, from American Powertrain, that kit has literally every piece. It's got clutch, it's got a pedal to put in for the clutch pedal, it's got everything. So that's something else to kind of look forward to, that as we wrap up these other projects, we're going to start working on that. That's all going to be happening here. So let us know. Like I said, if you guys have a square body and you're interested in that, let me know about that. Comment below. It's always good to hear what you guys are working on too, in conjunction with us. So yeah, it's exciting. So hopefully that intake is still available on Friday when I'm coming back from work, and hopefully that'll work out good. We can get it and use it. On this truck, I think I told you guys in the first video that it has the whole thing has stainless brake lines. So I wanted to show you this piece here. So this is actually going to go across the front cross member. If I'm not mistaken, it goes like this if you're looking toward the front of the truck. But I mean, like I said, you can see the work that's already been done on all this. This is just the one piece that's going, connecting the right front and left front, basically. So this is, everything is already bent and shaped, and all of this stuff was already done before we started back on it here a few months ago. So really nice stainless stuff, so we don't have to worry about rusting or anything like that. So I think Dad's working on finding the pressure that he needs to turn that power steering pump down to. And what we're saying is that pump on those Silverados is capable of putting 1500 psi out. And there's a certain pressure on those racks that it will literally blow the seals out of the rack, which can cause some damage. The main thing that Heights calls out is making sure not to hook your lines up backwards on your return on your. So we just got back from the Napa store. We had to do some trading on some lines for the heater hoses. We had got a 5/8 and a 3/4, right? 5/8 and 3/4 is what we had.
That's what we had, yeah.
Yeah, so we had a 5/8 and a 3/4, but both fittings for the heater inside of the truck, once you go past the firewall, inside of the truck here that goes into the heater, they're both 5/8. But on the LS, we got one 5/8 and one 3/4. So what we did, we were able to, since it wouldn't fit on here, couldn't clamp it up enough to really get it in here. We went ahead and went back and got another 5/8, little grease on the end of the hose, and it went up over that 3/4 fitting. So that's going to work fine. These are going to route right here. I'll have to bundle them up a little bit and keep them, but that's going to work really nice. Clears the exhaust. That's going to be good. Basically, that's been the most straightforward thing about the plumbing situation on this whole thing in general. Dad's been working on power steering lines. So when we went to the Napa store, we also run over Styles in Burnsville. He was very nice. He let us use some fittings to kind of mock some stuff up. So that's what we're trying to do now. They're not cooperating. So the Heights rack and pinions used to have a standard US thread pitch in there for the fittings down here, but recently, after sometime before this one was made, they swapped them over into some metric fittings, and we're having some trouble finding the right size, figuring that out. So basically where we are at the end of this video is that We are waiting on parts to get here for the coolant system. We're trying to figure out the power steering lines. Again, that's kind of been a hassle. We think it's going to be okay. If we can figure out these thread pitch, it won't be such a bad deal. The routing, just like everything else in here, has been really tight. Everything's really closed off. I mean, you got plenty of room as long as you don't have the radiator and you don't have the power steering pump and the bracket that holds the power. If you leave all of that stuff off, right, Daddy? If you leave all that stuff off, you got plenty of room to pretty much do whatever you want to do.
Can't drive it, but
So, I mean, you could probably drive it for a minute. You can't drive it very long. But yeah, so basically that's kind of where we are with it. We're not ending on a high note here, I'll be honest. We are just kind of waiting in limbo. We're gonna try and we'll wait for the rest of these parts to get here, see if we can figure out the fittings, and then we'll just keep going. That's all we can do. It has to run. We're going to power tour. So we got till June, but we really need to put quite a few miles on it, make sure everything's bulletproof before we go. Isn't that right, Daddy?
yes.
Yes. So you can tell he's really excited to go, and he's really excited to work on this thing right now. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes. So thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Do all the things you're supposed to do on a YouTube video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Don't forget, if you head over to our Facebook page, we also have a t-shirt giveaway going on. It's going on until noon on Saturday. So I put it up on Facebook. It's going up tonight, which is, what is today? Wednesday? Yeah. It's going up tonight, Wednesday, and you have until Saturday at noon to enter it in. To enter in, all you got to do is like the post, comment on the post what your dream car is, and share that post, please. And if you'll do that, you're entered in to win one of our new Shift Points t-shirts. So make sure if you've watched this video or if you've seen it on Facebook, go ahead and do those 3 things, and then you'll be entered in. We'll announce the winner sometime Saturday night. So thanks.